I always thought that the worst moment in a marriage was when you realized you'd married the wrong person. Turns out there's something infinitely worse. Realizing you married someone who could have been right, but who chose his mother over you every single time. Until you became a ghost in your own home, present but invisible, speaking but unheard. My name is Rachel Clark Whitmore, though I'm seriously considering dropping that second half. I'm 32 years old, and until 6 months ago, I genuinely believed I had a good life. A stable job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm downtown, a nice 2-bedroom apartment in a respectable suburb, and a husband named Tom who seemed, at least on the surface, to love me. We'd been married for 3 years, together for 5 before that. In the beginning, he was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, funny, attentive, ambitious. He remembered my coffee order, texted me good morning every day, and once drove 2 hours in a snowstorm just to bring me soup when I had the flu. But there was always one constant looming shadow over our relationship, darkening even our brightest moments. His mother, Patricia. Patricia Whitmore was the kind of woman who could smile warmly while simultaneously looking down her nose at you. She wore pearl necklaces like armor and wielded politeness like a finely sharpened blade. She had perfectly coiffed silver blonde hair, manicured nails that never chipped, and a wardrobe that screamed old money, even though, as I later learned, most of it came from her late husband's life insurance payout and some smart real estate investments, not generational wealth. From the very first moment Tom introduced us at an upscale restaurant 5 years ago, Patricia made it abundantly clear that I was not good enough for her precious son. Not wealthy enough, not educated at the right schools, not connected to the right families, not refined enough in manner or speech. My father was a general contractor who built decks and renovated kitchens. My mother was a third-grade teacher at a public elementary school. We were solidly, comfortably middle class, the kind of people who took one modest vacation a year, drove sensible cars, and saved carefully for retirement. To Patricia, we might as well have been living in a trailer park. "Oh, how quaint," she'd said the first time she came to my childhood home for Sunday dinner, looking around the modest living room with its mix of hand-me-down and IKEA furniture, family photos covering every available wall space, and my mother's collection of ceramic birds on the mantel. "You must be so proud of what your parents have managed to accomplish with limited resources and opportunities." The words were phrased as a compliment, but the tone made them an insult. Tom had squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Don't worry, she just needs time to warm up to you. She's protective, that's all." She never warmed up. If anything, she got colder. After Tom and I got engaged, Patricia's commentary intensified. She had opinions, loud, frequent, unsolicited opinions, about everything. The engagement ring Tom chose was a bit small, don't you think? I suppose it's the thought that counts. Our wedding plans were charming in their simplicity, though I do hope you'll reconsider the venue. A country club would be so much more appropriate. My wedding dress was sweet, very sweet, though perhaps a bit budget. I bit my tongue through all of it because I loved Tom and because he kept assuring me it would get better once we were married, once Patricia saw how happy we were together. It didn't get better. It got worse. After the wedding, Patricia's attention turned to how I managed our home. She'd drop by unannounced, Tom had given her a key for emergencies, and inspect everything like a drill sergeant. How I decorated our apartment was a bit pedestrian, don't you think? Perhaps I could recommend my interior designer. How I dressed for family functions was casual, very casual. You'd look so much more polished in something classic, structured. What I cooked for dinner when she joined us was inevitably inferior to her own recipes. Tom prefers his mother's pot roast, don't you, sweetheart? And Tom would nod apologetically while I scraped my own cooking into the trash. But her favorite target was my career. Still working at that little marketing firm? She'd ask every time we spoke, her tone dripping with fake concern. I keep hoping you'll find something more substantial, more befitting of Tom's position. Or perhaps you could focus on being a proper wife and eventually a mother. Tom works so hard after all. He needs support at home. The implication was always clear. My job was insignificant, my ambitions laughable, my contribution to our marriage minimal. And the worst part, the part that slowly broke me down over 3 years of marriage, wasn't Patricia, it was Tom. Every single time she criticized me, he stayed silent. Every time she made a cutting remark about my background, my clothes, my cooking, my career, he would change the subject or stare at his phone or suddenly remember something he needed to do in another room. When I confronted him privately, hurt and angry, he'd sigh with exasperation and say, "That's just how she is, Rachel. She doesn't mean it the way you're taking it. She means well. Don't take it so personally." But how else was I supposed to take it? 6 months ago, everything came to a head. Patricia decided to host what she called a family gathering at her estate, a sprawling 5-bedroom house in the hills that she'd purchased after her husband died, using the insurance money and the sale of their previous home. It was her pride and joy. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a chef's kitchen she never cooked in, and a dining room that could seat 20. She invited Tom's 2 siblings, his older brother Jeffrey and younger sister Amanda, along with their spouses, a handful of family friends from her social circle, and, of course, Tom and me. "It'll be a wonderful evening," Tom said as we drove up the long, tree-lined driveway the night of the dinner. "Mom's been planning this for weeks. She really wants everyone to come together. Just try to have a good time, okay? And maybe don't bring up anything controversial." Try to have a good time. Don't be controversial. Translation: don't react when she humiliates you. We arrived fashionably on time, 7 o'clock exactly, to find the house already filled with people holding wine glasses and chatting in clusters. Patricia stood in the grand foyer greeting guests like visiting dignitaries. She hugged Jeffrey and his wife Melissa warmly, kissed Amanda on both cheeks, laughed delightedly with her friends. When she saw me, her smile tightened. "Oh, good, you're here," she said, her tone flat. "Rachel, darling, the kitchen could use an extra pair of hands. The caterers are running a bit behind, and someone needs to make sure the appetizers get plated properly. You don't mind, do you?" It wasn't a question. Tom didn't even flinch. He was already drifting toward his brother, drink in hand. I swallowed my pride, again, and went to the kitchen, where I spent the next hour and a half arranging prosciutto on crackers, garnishing shrimp cocktail, and refilling serving trays. The caterers were perfectly capable and didn't need my help. Patricia just wanted me out of sight. I was useful labor, not a guest worth mingling with. Nobody thanked me. Nobody even acknowledged me. When dinner was finally served, I slipped into the dining room and took my assigned seat near the far end of the long mahogany table, beside Tom. Patricia sat at the head like a queen holding court, with her closest friends and Jeffrey on either side. The table was set with fine china, sterling silver, and crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandelier overhead. The food was exquisite. Roasted duck, garlic mashed potatoes, grilled asparagus, fresh bread. But I barely tasted it. The conversation flowed around me like a river around a stone. They talked about things I had no part in. business ventures, country club drama, upcoming charity galas, vacation homes in Aspen and the Hamptons. I had nothing to contribute to these topics, and nobody, not even Tom, made any effort to include me. I might as well have been a piece of furniture. Then, about halfway through the main course, Patricia set down her fork with a delicate clink and turned her gaze directly at me. "Rachel, darling," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. Everyone stopped talking and looked at me. "Would you mind terribly clearing some of these plates? I think we're ready to transition to dessert, and it would be so helpful to have the table tidied up." I stared at her. Several people were still eating. I haven't finished yet," I said quietly, gesturing to my own half-full plate. "Oh, well, you can finish later in the kitchen," Patricia said with a dismissive little wave. "After all, you've been so wonderfully helpful this evening. Why stop now?" A few people chuckled uncomfortably. Amanda smirked into her wine glass. Tom shifted beside me but said absolutely nothing. Something inside me snapped. "I'm a guest here," I said, my voice steady despite the furious pounding of my heart. "Not hired help." The entire table went dead silent. Patricia's smile turned to ice. "A guest who contributes is a valued guest," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "A guest who sits idly while others work is, well, frankly, a burden." More uncomfortable laughter rippled around the table. I looked at Tom, really looked at him, silently begging him to say something, anything, to stand up for me just once. He cleared his throat and stared down at his plate. "Rachel, let's not make a scene, okay?" he muttered under his breath. That was the moment I knew my marriage was over. Patricia stood up, walked slowly and deliberately to the sideboard, and picked up a folded white apron, the kind servers wear. She walked back to where I sat and held it out to me, dangling it between two perfectly manicured fingers. "Here," she said, her voice no longer even pretending to be polite. "You're the help here. Put on an apron." The room erupted in a mix of shocked gasps and nervous laughter. Jeffrey snorted into his wine. Amanda covered her mouth, eyes wide with glee. Melissa looked away uncomfortably. And Tom just sat there, frozen, staring at his plate like a coward. I sat paralyzed, staring at that apron, humiliation burning through every cell in my body. And then I heard the front door open. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed through the marble foyer. Everyone turned toward the sound, curious and confused. My father walked into the dining room. He was still in his work clothes, faded jeans, scuffed work boots, a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a light coating of sawdust still clinging to his shoulders. He looked completely, utterly out of place in Patricia's pristine, polished dining room. But he walked with the kind of quiet, unshakable authority that made every person in that room fall silent and sit up straighter. In his right hand, he carried a plain manila folder. "Rachel," he said, his voice calm and even, "I got your text." I'd texted him 25 minutes earlier, sitting in Patricia's kitchen while I plated appetizers. A single, desperate message. "I can't do this anymore." I hadn't expected him to come. I just needed to tell someone how I felt. But here he was. Patricia recovered first, her smile returning but strained. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" she asked, her tone condescending. "David Clark," my father said evenly. "Rachel's father." "Ah, yes, the contractor," Patricia said, looking him up and down with barely concealed disdain. "How industrious of you to stop by unannounced. But as you can see, we're in the middle of a private family dinner. Perhaps you could come back another time?" "I don't think so," my father said. He walked calmly to the table and set the manila folder down directly in front of Patricia. "What is this?" she asked, frowning at it like it might bite her. "Open it," my father said. Patricia hesitated, glancing around at her guests as if looking for support. Then, with an irritated sigh, she flipped open the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. Her face, which moments before had been full of smug confidence, drained of all color. Her hands began to tremble. The papers rustled audibly in the silence. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Doesn't matter where I got it," my father said calmly. "What matters is what it says." Tom leaned over, trying to see. His face went pale as he read. I had no idea what was in that folder, but I watched as Patricia's entire body seemed to deflate, her shoulders sagging, her grip on the table edge turning white-knuckled. "David, please," she whispered, and for the first time since I'd known her, Patricia Whitmore sounded afraid. "Please, not this. You can't—" "I can," my father said, "and I will, unless you apologize to my daughter, right now, in front of everyone." "What the hell is going on?" Jeffrey demanded, standing up. Patricia held up a shaking hand to silence him, her eyes never leaving my father's face. She started, then stopped, swallowed, tried again. "I'm sorry." "Louder," my father said, "and look at her when you say it." Patricia turned to me, and I saw something I never thought I'd see in her eyes, genuine fear. "I'm sorry, Rachel," she said, her voice stronger now but trembling. "I'm sorry for the way I've treated you." "For what specifically?" my father pressed. "For treating you like a servant," Patricia said, the words clearly painful for her to say. "For disrespecting you in your own marriage, for undermining you at every opportunity, for being cruel, for all of it." The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. My father picked up the folder and tucked it under his arm. "Good," he said simply. Then he looked at me. "Rachel, get your things. You're coming home with me." I stood up on shaking legs. Tom finally moved, reaching for my arm. "Rachel, wait, we need to talk about this." I yanked my arm away. "No," I said, and my voice was steady now, strong. "We don't. You had 1,000 chances to defend me, Tom. You chose her every single time. Every insult, every humiliation. You just sat there and let it happen. You're not my husband. You're her son, and I'm done." I walked out of that dining room, out of that house, and into my father's truck without looking back. In the car, as we drove down the long driveway, I finally asked the question burning in my mind. "Dad, what was in that folder?" My father glanced at me, then smiled. A small, knowing, slightly mischievous smile I remembered from childhood. "Building permits," he said, or rather, the lack of them. I blinked. "What?" "Turns out your mother-in-law has been doing some major renovations on that fancy house of hers over the last 2 years, he explained. Knocked down a load-bearing wall to open up the kitchen, added a sunroom off the back, redid all the plumbing and electrical in the master suite. Beautiful work, really. Professional job. Okay. Problem is, she never pulled permits for any of it. Not one. It's all unpermitted, uninspected work. Major code violations. I know because I do inspection contract work for the county building department 3 days a week. I saw the complaints that had been filed by a neighbor. I pulled the records. That folder contained copies of everything. Photos, violation notices, estimated fines. My jaw dropped. "You were going to report her?" "If I had to, yes," he said. But I had a feeling I wouldn't need to. People like Patricia care about 3 things: money, reputation, and property value. One phone call to the right people at the city, and she'd be facing tens of thousands in fines, forced demolition of unpermitted work, and a legal nightmare that would tank her property value and humiliate her in front of all her high society friends. She'd be ruined. You blackmailed her, I said, stunned. I gave her a choice, he corrected. Treat my daughter with respect or face the consequences of her own illegal choices. She made hers. Now you get to make yours. I stared at him. This man who'd taught me to ride a bike, helped me with homework, walked me down the aisle, and had just destroyed my mother-in-law with a folder of building permits. Thank you, I whispered. You never have to thank me for protecting you, he said. That's what fathers do. 3 days later, Tom showed up at my father's house. I was staying in my old childhood bedroom, surrounded by faded posters and participation trophies, trying to figure out what the hell came next. I heard the doorbell, heard my father answer, heard Tom's voice asking to see me. I'll ask if she wants to see you, my father said. But if she says no, you leave. Understood? I came downstairs. Tom stood in the doorway, looking exhausted and miserable. Can we talk? He asked. Please? There's nothing to talk about, I said. Rachel, I love you. You love your mother more. He flinched like I'd slapped him. That's not true. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. When was the last time you defended me, Tom? When was the last time you chose me over her? Name one time. Just one. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. That's what I thought, I said. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll be served with divorce papers next week. Rachel, don't do this. We can work it out. I'll talk to my mother. I'll set boundaries. It's too late, I said. You should have set boundaries 3 years ago, or 5 years ago. But you didn't, and now I'm done. Goodbye, Tom. I closed the door in his face. 6 months later, I'm still living with my dad, but not for much longer. I found a new job, better pay, better people. Started therapy. Started remembering who I was before I became Tom's wife and Patricia's punching bag. I'm looking at apartments, building a new life. Patricia never contacted me again. Tom signed the divorce papers without contest. And my father? He never actually filed that report with the city. He didn't need to. The threat was enough. Patricia got her permits retroactively, paid the fines quietly, and learned to keep her mouth shut. Sometimes the threat of consequences is enough to change someone's behavior. And sometimes all you need is one person willing to stand up for you when no one else will. Even if that person shows up in work boots and sawdust, holding a manila folder that changes everything.